Now that we've gone ahead and created the project for our welcome app, we're going to begin the process of designing and testing the app as well. Now, right out of the box, the app is actually executable. So I'm going to go ahead and run the app so you can see it in action. And let me pull up my AVD here. And in a moment, after it installs the app, it'll start executing, and you can see we just have a simple app with a black background. The title bar shows the name of the app, which is Welcome, and it's displaying Hello World with the name of our app built into it. So that is the total app in its current form, and what we now want to do is customize this to display the text and images you saw when we test drove our final version of the Welcome app. Now it turns out that it has already created for us a basic layout for the graphical user interface in this example, and you'll find that within the project's res layout folder. And if I open that up, you'll see that there's a main.xml file which represents our graphical user interface. If I double click that file, it's then displayed to me in the visual layout editor, and right now it's set up to develop for the Android 3 platform for a device that has only a 2.7-inch screen in QVGA resolution. And what you're going to want to do is reconfigure the IDE so that it matches more closely with the devices that you're trying to target. So for example, we set up this project to run on devices that use Android 2.3.3. So I'm going to select that from my so-called SDK selector drop-down list. Then I'm going to go over here in the left-hand column to the device configurations drop-down list, and what you want to do is either create your own custom layout or select one of the predefined ones that closely matches the configuration of your device. So for example, we're designing primarily in this Live Lessons product and in the corresponding book, Android for Programmers, for devices that have a 800 by 480 screen resolution. And really the size of the device doesn't matter as much as the resolution, because Android is going to scale the resources you provide based on the dimensions of the screen and the resolution of the screen automatically. So one of the things we try to do when building Android GUIs is take advantage of Android's automatic scaling capabilities, and we'll be talking about those capabilities as part of this app and also the next couple of apps as well. Now, for my purpose, I chose the 3.7-inch WVGA resolution. WVGA is 800 by 480, and our primary testing device also is 800 by 480, as is the AVD on which we demonstrated this app to you. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and select the 3.7-inch WVGA, and you'll notice that my design area has now grown. I can scroll through that design area. Obviously, just a black background and scrolling, you can't see very much, but it's now taller than what I can show you on the screen at the moment. So one of the other things you want to be aware of is these buttons in the upper right corner here, and if you hover over them, you can see that there's a few options here. We can emulate the real size of the device. We can zoom this to fit on the screen, and if I click that, you'll notice that the whole vertical resolution is now displayed, so it had to scale down the size of what it was showing me. I can also reset the zoom to 100%, which gets us back to what we saw a moment ago, and then I have zoom out and zoom in capabilities as well. So if I want to zoom out to smaller and smaller sizes, I can, and if I want to zoom back in, I can as well. And I can always reset to 100% at any time. So you certainly want to be aware of those buttons to help you work within the design area here. Now, in addition to the visual layout tab, or the what's known as the graphical layout tab, we also have the XML view of what's being displayed on the screen here. If I click main.xml, you'll see the actual XML code that represents the graphical user interface that you saw on the screen a moment ago. And the default main.xml file that's generated for you consists of a linear layout. Here's the start tag and here's the end tag. And within that linear layout, which just organizes items in a line, we have a text view as well. And this linear layout's orientation is vertical, using the Android: orientation attribute. And by the way, many Android developers prefer to work directly in the XML, and if I want to, I could do that here. So for example, if I wanted to set some other property of the linear layout, I can start typing Android : and it now lists to me all of the different properties that I have available to me for the linear layout, and then I can start adding those in using the help within the IDE itself to help me write my code. So if you want to work directly in XML, you can. Many programmers who started working in Android from early versions only work in XML because the design tools weren't very handy in earlier versions of Android, but they do keep improving, and now it is possible to use the graphical layout tab to work with your GUI in a more robust manner within the IDE. So that's up to you to make that decision. As we present everything to you in this live lessons video and in our book, we tend to work with the visual layout editor as well as what's known as the outline view. And I'm just going to go ahead and expand that outline view here. And within the outline view, what you can see is the hierarchy of components within your app. So we have an item which is a linear layout. That's the overall layout in which Hello World Welcome is appearing. And within that linear layout, I have a text view. And one of the things that you can do with the different items is configure their properties through the visual layout editor if you would like. So for example, if I right click on the text view, you can see that there's a properties option here, and I can go directly to the properties that way. If I do that, then I have to go through these menus, which is kind of not very handy. But if I double click an item in the outline view, let me restore that outline view for a moment here, you can see that it puts the properties window down at the bottom of the screen, and I can certainly scroll through the properties, but it's kind of hard to see a lot of properties down at the bottom here. So what a lot of people like to do is move this properties window over to the right hand side of the IDE, and you can see as I drag this around, it's giving me different docking options. So what I like to do is just have it towards the bottom of the outline window here, and that gives me the ability to see the properties in a vertical orientation. The problem is when you first move it, you'll notice that this left-hand column that lists the property names is very wide. So what I usually do is narrow that back down so that I can see the values. And then separately, the values column is also quite wide, and sometimes I need to access the right side of that column because there might be, for example, a ... button that allows me to go configure something. So for example, if I click on the background attribute for that text view that's currently selected, I get this ... button, and I can then go over here and start choosing a resource that I might use to represent the background image for the text view or color for the text view, etc. So I've now reconfigured, if you will, my properties window so that I can see the property names and values, and now depending on what's selected in the outline window up above here, I can see the various properties of that item. Right now I've selected the linear layout, and now I'm seeing all the features of a linear layout. Remember that the orientation of that was vertical, so if I scroll down to the orientation attribute, I could come in here, and if I wanted it to be horizontal, I could select horizontal. So it's just an easier way to access all the properties of a given object. And I do want to warn you that there are a few properties that do not properly show up in the properties window. So even in some cases, you will have to go to the XML, which you'll see in the next app, in the next lesson, to deal with certain attributes. And once you place them directly into the XML, then they will show up in the properties window as well. So we now have our IDE configured for the purpose of designing a graphical user interface. And in this case, we really don't want a linear layout for our app. So in the next video, what we're going to do is remove this original main.xml, create a new one, and then start actually placing items on the screen.